How are you?
Good. Everybody smile and wave.
Sorry to hear that.
I've been laying on my back for
the Wall Street bailouts. Thank you for opposing unnecessary wars.
I serve on the Republican State Central Committee. I'm also a district chair for the campaign here in Iowa, and I'm also a small business owner here in Davenport, Iowa. However, today is not about me. It's about you and our nation's future. If you agree, I want you guys to shout back, "We the people."
We the people!
Wait. Who here is ready for the government to have a balanced budget?
We the people!
Who here is ready to say goodbye to Obamacare?
Yeah! We the people!
Who here is ready for a government that answers to us instead of lobbyists and special interests?
We the people!
Who here is ready for a government run by our Constitution?
We the people!
And who here supports the only candidate who can defeat Obama in November, Ron Paul?
We the people!
First, I would like to introduce to you Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky and a stalwart defender of freedom.
It looks like there's a lot of undecided voters here, right?
Nope.
And my dad asked me to come and campaign. I said, well, it's not going to be cold, right? I said, I'll do it on one condition. I don't have to wear a tie, so here I am. Now, y'all may have heard there was a little girl, and she wrote a letter to God. And she wanted $100. She said she would do great things with it if God would just send her $100. Well, the postmaster didn't know what to do with the letter, so he sent it to the president. The president got the letter, and he said, well, that's cute. And he told his secretary, send her $5. So she got the $5, and her parents had taught her always to write a thank you note. It was only $5, but she said, well, dear God, thanks for the $5. But next time, don't send it through Washington. They stole 95% of it. Now, some people say we could never cut enough spending to balance the budget. We could never do it. I'll give you just one example of where we could get started. I think Republicans and Democrats, independents, we could all get together and agree that we should no longer send out checks to dead people. $600 million was sent out to dead people in the last 5 years.
Is that it?
That's all they've discovered. One guy got his dad's government pension check from 1971 till 2008. He collected over $500,000. One person. You know how they caught him? He died. We are borrowing $40,000 a second. Every minute we're going to borrow $2 million. Just in the time we're here today, we're going to borrow over $70 million. We owe China over $1 trillion. You know what the insult, the rubbing salt in the wound is? We owe China $1 trillion, and you know what? We send them foreign aid. We send them economic assistance. We send them economic development assistance to China. It is an insult. It's what separates many Republicans. I introduced an amendment to get rid of foreign aid. You know how many votes I got? There are 47 Republicans in the Senate, and we got 20. There's a lot of conservatives masquerading as conservatives running for president in your field here in Iowa who would have voted and did vote for foreign aid. You need to know about it. There's only one candidate in the race, though, who has a plan that would balance the budget in his first term. There's only one candidate in the race who would cut $1 trillion. There's only one candidate in the race who understands that we will only fix this problem when conservatives and liberals both understand that the cuts will have to be across the board. Conservatives will have to understand that not every dollar spent for the military is sacred or well spent. Liberals will have to understand that not every dollar spent for domestic spending is sacred or well spent. When the two come together, when we recognize the profundity of the problem we face, the day of reckoning that is coming is the debt crisis. It's in Europe now, and the dominoes are following. But there's only one candidate who truly recognizes this and has the record to back it up. There's only one candidate who the Wall Street Journal described as a statesman whose refusal to compromise is legendary. There's only one candidate in this race who's never been accused of flip-flopping. There's only one candidate in this race who's never, ever voted for an unbalanced budget. There's only one candidate in this race who the soldiers truly trust. Now, there's been a lot of flack about foreign policy and saying, Ron Paul, his foreign policy isn't strong. Who do you think the soldiers trust? More active duty soldiers have given contributions to Ron Paul than all of the other candidates combined.
That's right.
Ron Paul will defend America, but Ron Paul believes in the Constitution that there are checks and balances, that Congress should declare war, that we don't fight for the United Nations, that we fight for the United States. But we do so reluctantly. We fight when attacked, and we fight when Congress approves and declares a war. This is something that you see the media every day saying can't be elected because of his foreign policy. Look at the crowds. Double, triple, quadruple what the other candidates are getting. Enormous crowds coming because they want something different. A fiscal conservative who also believes in a constitutional foreign policy. With that, I give you my candidate for president, my father, Ron Paul. Thank you, and thank you, Rand, for that introduction. He does such a good job, I don't know what I have left to say. But it is wonderful to see such a crowd out. We, the people, are growing. Do you know that? The numbers are growing like leaps and bounds. And it isn't, as Rand pointed out, we have to get people to come together, liberals and conservatives. And I think that's one thing this campaign has done. We have gotten liberals, conservatives, independents, and bringing people together. To me, the magnificent thing about bringing people together is the understanding about what freedom is all about. If you really understand personal liberty, it means that your life is your own, you can lead your own life as you choose, but you also get to spend your own money as you choose as well. And I've been growing with optimism, and I've been in the business of promoting our Constitution and individual liberty for a long time. And quite frankly, thought years ago that the best I could do is get to Congress and try my best to set a record and get it endorsed in this local area and get reelected. And I actually believe that setting the record would be my responsibility and obligation. And we did that and got reelected and didn't get opponents and kept winning by larger margins. But the country has changed a lot, and it's desperately looking for something else. And all of a sudden, this message of the Constitution and freedom and American traditions, all of a sudden has become much more acceptable, and people are thinking about it.
Yes, it is an appropriate message, but there's also something else going on. The country's in a mess. It's in a mess, and it's an economic mess, a spending mess, an attack on our civil liberties. I am so pleased on the campaign trail recent months here in Iowa that the people have responded to my concern about the intrusion of our federal government into our privacy and our private lives, and I am delighted to know that. Most everything that happens in Washington, there's usually a few with ulterior motives, but usually those who go along with it, with some of these problems, whether it's the war or economic intervention, they are motivated with good intention. They are frightened. Fear is a tool that politicians use. Just think of how we were, as a people, badgered into supporting the war in Iraq. The problem wasn't there. There were no weapons of mass destruction, no Al-Qaeda, but fear built it up, and the people tended to support it. Same thing on economic policy. Oh, you know, the economy is going to collapse. We're going to have a Great Depression, so therefore we have to bail out everybody. But guess what? The people who were ripping us off and making bundles during the boom times, they got the bailout, and the bad debt got dumped on the people, and that's what we have to reverse. We need to take care of the people and make sure the people who get all the privileges and the benefits and the bailouts, that should stop. If one understands the principles of liberty, they understand the market, they understand property rights, they understand the foreign policy, and this is where I'm encouraged. People are starting to understand this, that that is and was supposed to be the purpose of the government. Part of protecting individual liberty in a limited fashion, the federal government has very little to do. They should provide a strong national defense. Quite frankly, I do not feel safer because we have become the policemen of the world and have gotten involved in way too many wars. It's time that we look after our own national defense and start getting our troops back home here. Spend a lot of time overseas dealing with the internal problems of other nations and the regional squabbles that go on. We worry so much more about the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan than we do about our own borders. I think it should be reversed. We should think about our borders. Once it was decided that we would have a new nation and we threw off the tyranny of the king, the states were very reluctant because they wanted to be independent states, so the Constitution was written to protect the independence of our states and limit strictly what the federal government can do. We have forgotten about that. We have forgotten about today's generation waking up to it, if out of necessity, if nothing else, because the federal government is way too big and they're always too anxious to go up one more level and even use international government in the finances and our foreign policy. So that is the reason the Constitution does protect our national sovereignty. We shouldn't be selling out to the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank, and to the United Nations. It should be the United States of America. Legislation that gets passed, led by individuals that may have wanted it for a long time, will use opportunities. After 9/11, it was an opportunity because we were all concerned and frightened. It was necessary for us to go after the Al-Qaeda, those people responsible. But believe me, going after the Al-Qaeda and going after bin Laden, and then tragically it took us 10 years to do that, was one thing. But why do they have to go after the American people? Why did we have the Patriot Act put onto the American people? The Patriot Act was essentially a bill that repealed the Fourth Amendment. We are not protected. The government now has authority, government agencies. The law enforcement officers can write their own search warrants. The courts are outside it. They can look at all our papers. They can search our houses. And if you tell anybody that the federal government had been in your house, searching your house, that you break another law, you become a felon by even telling somebody. So we're going in the wrong direction because of our lack of respect and understanding about personal liberty. You know, it wasn't too long ago, about a year ago, the president announced that he has a new policy. The new policy is if you are construed by him and his executive branch of being a bad person, even if you're an American citizen, that you qualify to be assassinated. That is not the way it's supposed to be done. We're supposed to have a trial and charges made and follow through the rule of law. So we're moving in the wrong direction. Just recently it was passed, the President, I believe, signed it yesterday, and that was the National Defense Authorization Act. You know, this is what impresses me, is that I am so happy that you know about it and you know what's coming. So often, and you know, and I know the media's here, and I'm not in the business of bashing the media. You know, they're all our friends. Let me tell you, I don't believe you heard that on the evening news. I bet you come off the internet to find out what they're doing. What it means, though, is that they've repealed the Posse Comitatus Act. We now have given written authority to the executive branch that an American citizen can be arrested by the military for indefinite time and denied an attorney. One senator mentioned, he said, yes, if we think you're a suspicious character and you might have associated with a group that might have done some harm, and you come to us and ask you for an attorney, we'll say you get no attorney, you don't qualify. This is what's going on. And just think of the people who have gotten trials. I mean, the war criminals, the Nazi war criminals got a trial. Adolf Eichmann got a trial over in Israel. They gave him a trial. But this idea that we know somebody's a bad person and therefore he can be arrested and held in secret in prison camps overseas or in Guantanamo, that is the wrong direction. That is exactly the opposite of what we were given. So it is up to us now to restate the principles of the American tradition, and that is individual liberty. If we did that, our foreign policy would be different. We would not be the policemen of the world. We would not be telling people how to live. We would be willing to talk to people when they're willing to talk to people. We would contain them when they got out of control or threatened us. But we do not need or believe for a minute that we can go around the world, because it contributes to the bankruptcy. They're not two separate issues. $4 trillion was added to our debt in the last 10 years fighting wars that were illegal, unconstitutional, were not fought in our national defense, and they're ongoing. They've even now today, we got involved with a couple $1 billion deal in Libya. There's plans now to be very much involved in Syria. There are plans made to stir up war. Just listen to some of the other candidates. They're willing to start bombing Iran right now. You know, one thing for certain, this country does not need another war. I'll tell you that. I have said, and many others have, and some still say it, that we have to take care of the spending because we can't pass the debt on to the next generation. Now that was more appropriate a year ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But believe me, it is today. The crisis is here today. It's this generation. It's all of us. Whether we're students graduating from college with huge debt, whether it's the people who can't get jobs, whether it's the people who are dying over in wars that don't make any sense, it is today. The financial crisis is not a blip. This is different. We weren't in a mild recession that we're recovering from. We were in a huge recession, indeed is a depression, because right now over 22% of the American people are unemployed. And the government would like us to believe that it's nothing like that. Inflation is much higher than they admit to. So it is today. We are preparing right now, because our dollar has stayed up and compared to other currencies. We are now prepared, as Bernanke and others are in Europe, to bail out all of Europe and all the banks. But it cannot be done. Not only is it morally wrong and a bigger burden on us, it's leading to a disaster, and the financial crisis could get much worse any time. This is the reason it's urgent. It isn't like we have 10, 20, 30 years. I think the foundation has been eroded. A crisis could hit if some foolish thing happens where a war breaks out in the Middle East, where Iran is involved and oil goes to $200 a barrel. The foundation of our system is in such shaky conditions. This is why the answer should be so delightful and exciting, because it isn't anything new, and it's wonderful because it's the ideas of freedom. That is all that we need to do. Test of a free society has been in America. We had the largest middle class and the most prosperity. Today, our middle class is shrinking. The wealth is being transferred to the super rich, and our experiment is not working out so well. So we don't have to invent anything new. We have to restore confidence in ourselves, confidence in freedom, confidence in the marketplace, property rights, confidence in honest money, confidence that we actually could exist without a Federal Reserve System bailing out all their money. Let me conclude, because we are on a fast schedule here today, with a positive note. Even before the immediate election coming up here, in the last year or two, the movement has been very significant. The growing number of people who are understanding this, especially when I go to the university, young people, the generation is inheriting all this, are enthusiastic about the cause of liberty. So we have every reason to believe that we can turn this around, and that tomorrow we may well send a message that is going to be heard, not just throughout Iowa, but throughout this country, and believe it or not, it could be heard throughout the world. Thank you very much.
For opposing the indefinite detention of Americans. Thank you for opposing the indefinite detention of Americans. Thank you for opposing bailouts for Wall Street billionaires. Thank you for opposing the bailouts of Wall Street billionaires. Thank you for opposing unnecessary wars. Thank you for opposing unnecessary wars. Thank you for standing up against corporatism. Thank you for standing up against corporatism.